And the public dock shall be expanded. That's the legal word, shall be expanded. Okay. Development of fueling facilities for commercial and recreation vessels should be encouraged. I mean, it hasn't been done. You want to? You're the voting side of the world. Okay, you go.
I've been going to a lot of Port Commission meetings because I'm a steward for the Port of Port Madison. Our ports, we have volunteer stewards that go to the Port Commission meeting, which is a volunteer operation, and they're all individuals, but in general they've been very frustrated because they have no money. All they can do is to recommend to the city, and the city of Bainbridge Island has a lot to do and a lot to worry about. We have road problems, we have a lot of problems, and the water issues get left behind, and this is frustrated, I think, much the commission has, by a couple of them running, I believe. It should save the city, and there is a very important member in the community that is paid by the community. That's our Harbor, Tammy Allen, which, what is her proper title anyway?
Harbor Master.
Harbor Master. Certainly, I would think that if we have a port district, we will hire her and take her off the city's payroll right quick, because she is doing a very good job of trying to police and make things work. There are some council members that they're more favorable and they're more interested in the water than others, but in general they have too much to do and not enough money to do it. And I think that they will welcome Port District. I don't see any conflict.
What you say the city council has too much to do, and I guess I could understand that because there's all sorts of things. We hear it all the time in our reporting, all the rest. But if the public will was there to really do some of these things, shouldn't the city council be able to acquire that money anyway? I mean, don't you see that there's kind of a layering there of the taxes? If the people of Bainbridge Island really wanted to do brand new docks or some of the things that are outlined in there, wouldn't the public have been asked along the way, or is that what they're kind of deficient in?
With the Washington State Ferries money, there was an overwhelming majority of the people that voiced themselves on that, who said,
who would have preferred to spend it this way.
Get the land, get the land, get the land. If you're going to get the money, use it this way, right? However, the money has gone into the general fund, and in March of this year, the Harbor Commission asked the city to reserve a very small portion of that, either depending on what level of grant they were going for, on a 25% required match grant, either $50,000 or up to $400,000 for the maximum of $1.6 million on the grant. Just reserve it to execute this type of thing. And they were told, well, that money is going to be discussed as part of our capital facilities planning this summer.
So they intended to lump everything in with all of the city.
Exactly. It isn't, you know, and I mean, people, you look at this harbor management plan and the people that were involved. I mean, you've got absolutely super people that were involved in putting this whole thing together, and virtually very, very little has been executed. Waterfront master plan, waterfront park master plan, also 1997, and what should be done. Team Winslow would like to see the dock facilities expanded to allow Winslow to become a destination for boat traffic. But it just ends up on the bottom. So if you have an agency who's focused on finally executing these, it would be to everybody's benefit.
Now, to do some of those things, would you need to acquire assets? Some of the, whether it's rights of ways or actually owning docks, things like that. Is that part of?
Well, that would be what the commissioners would then sit down with the city and determine where some of their workload could be removed, whether it's leased, you lease it, or I don't know.
I guess that's what I'm asking. Have you, in your talks with the city, as this has been ongoing, do you get the indication that, you know, you're saying they would probably love to get rid of some of the work. Would they also love to part with some of the property that would be natural for a port to own?
I don't know the answer to that.
So,
And I don't know that it's an arena that we should enter into yet. We have 4 council seats that are going to be voted on in November, which can change the complexion of the council.
But you feel that a port would still be a worthwhile venture,
Oh, exactly.
even if that stuff could not be
Right.
acquired, even if it did not have assets.
Oh, yes.
Still in terms of
Just
what it can lobby
the
for.
projects
things
that
like
it can do. And I mean, there's 70 road ends around the island. And there's a road ends committee that's been very active for 20 years. Also same position as the Harbor Commission, where they've attempted to get funds. And they even had, tell them about the Boy Scout routine.
Yeah, we have a very good committee of volunteers to help develop the road ends. And they have several projects right now. They're stopped for several years. They have volunteers that do the swamping, clear them up. They've got volunteers to design the stairway to get down to the beach. They have volunteers to build the stairway, volunteers to deliver the lumber, everything, but they don't have a building permit. It's city property, and the building permits are a bunch of cash. And the city demands a building permit, and these projects are stopping all this volunteer activity on city property, which is hard for me to understand. And hard for the Trails Committee to understand, I think, too.
Yeah, that's one that we've recorded on.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Okay, you live here.
You're trying to,
Okay, I'm
It's okay.
flipping it around here. So tell me about the relationship between the Port of Bremerton and the City of Bremerton.
well, right, Rachel's a better person to answer that question, but
They cooperate on some things. For example, there's an emerging industrial area called the South Kitsap Industrial Area, SKIA, that they're working on, trying to build a road through it so that it can be gotten into and such, and working on a plan for that now, master plan for SKIA. So there's some work together
That the
on
port
that.
is working on.
The port and the city are working on the city.
Okay.
and they do, and I know what you're asking, and exactly what you opened with. They do some of those same things when you said partnering with chambers, and
Yeah.
because they definitely hosted events, those harbor festivals and some of the other stuff. They've done some of those things. I think what I was getting at is, and I don't know the origins of the Port of Bremerton off the top of my head, so I don't know if they came from the same place. But what it sounded like you were saying was there's an unwillingness from the city council side to do some of these things, and that's why you would create this agency to
Yeah.
do it. And so what I was trying to ask is,
Yeah.
if you do that, are you setting yourself up so that you would immediately be at odds with the city council because you're?
Oh, I don't think so.
I don't know whether unwillingness is the right word or not.
Or just inability.
They just-
Because
they can't do it. They just don't have the money.
And they have other things to worry about. But your other question about could Bainbridge get more money, that's that's a hard one to answer.
Yeah, well, and maybe that was the other thing I just was curious about when the funding was set up, because it's being advertised as 11 cents
Right.
per $1,000. How is that number arrived at?
Well, it is arrived at, it could be 1 cent and it could be more. Okay, but we looked at all the ports in the county, and you go from Tracington to 4 cents to, you guys are at bingo at 79 cents, to Brownsville 27, Poulsbo 27, and then looked at the total assessed value for the island, which is the very nice thing because the total assessed value is $5,860,000, something like that. Hold on. Here. One more. And what is the average? Here we are, $5,642,000,000. And what is the average home value on the island? Just 500,000. So then to come up with something that would be easily acceptable was $55, or as we're saying, a latte a month for $5 a month for it.
What do you anticipate being kind of the ongoing annual expenses? Because that's kind of a deciding that we can get 11 cents, so that's what we're going after. But what do you think you need? How much money do you need for ongoing operations?
Don't know. That's a process that when the commissioners are chosen, and starting January, they will probably be meeting, bi-monthly, choose a port advisory committee, and then we'll go through a process of determining community priorities, what needs to be done, seeking out other funding sources. There's multiple grants that can add to that. To determine and then come up with a budget by the end of August and September, and like if all your other taxing districts would then submit that to the county. That is not a question that could be answered now.
Well, so like you said though, maybe we bring the harbor master over, so we know there's that expense, there's.
And you have to repay
employee.
an election. There's 20,000 too. So.
Right. So you got those expenses.
Right off the bat.
So I guess the question I'm trying to get at, do we know that 11 cents per 1,000 is enough to run the port?
No.
That's just a guess right now. So it could come out and be 27 cents.
Or it could come out to be 6. Because, the beautiful thing is like a business. You can borrow money against future cash flow. And that's the benefit that they may determine that 10 years down the road, take a 10-year window to finance expanding boat launches. We need them for emergency reasons as well. You can only put the fire department's boat under the water in 2 places. Expand that. A fuel dock.
Now there would be, because you do kind of outline some of the priorities as far as restoration and building things. Now there would be estimates on these things, so.
Oh, yes.
Those are known costs.
Yes, those could be. Yes, those we could definitely determine those as known costs. But the commissioners themselves are the ones that have to determine these. And believe me, I'll probably be working on nailing down some pro formas on, and execution costs and ways of financing or something like that. But that's the start of a to-do list.
Well, I believe we need to get people to understand some of the opportunities too. My wife and I are retired now, so we're able to enjoy our 30-foot sailboat, and we sail around, whether it's San Juan's or the Puget Sound or into the Gulf Islands. The communities there that are really welcome boaters, and the merchants that benefit from this, the restaurants and grocery stores and what have you, are doing very well because of the summer maritime people that come through. And Winslow Harbor has got to be something. It's right closest one to Seattle, and it has hardly anything. You have a small dock. If you could hardly land your dinghy, and you need a spot to land dinghies and anchor out. And there's others that want to come in and pay more money for a berth that really isn't there. This could be far more welcoming to the boater, and I think that our restaurants and our merchants would benefit. Because there you have these people that are buying and they aren't taking up parking places.
All right. I spent, when I first started sort of researching, I spent some time on the phone with a man by the name, last name Jones, and I think his first name was Rick, and he said in Washington, he was head of Washington Public Ports Association. And I started saying, I'm just exploring the possibility of creating a port district of Bainbridge Island. And I no sooner got that out of my mouth, and he says, you really need one over there. I took my boat into Eagle Harbor once, and you're hitting stuff everywhere. It's just, I'm not coming back. He says, you guys got to clean that place up. Okay, but this gives you an idea too. It's like, where do Seattle boaters go for the weekend? And you can see where they go and where they don't go. Bainbridge Island, guest slips, 8 maybe, gas no, water no, power no. And Bremerton 55. So Port Townsend 250 guest slips.
Were these the same issues during the other attempts? Has that always been a constant?
You mean this one, the 1973
yeah,
one?
I mean, you were kind of saying how this idea has been around for a long time.
Back in 73, I think it was the acquisition of the land
There's more of that.
to turn it into a marina, which means obviously there was a need for more boating facilities even back in 73.
I was actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That's what I wanted to ask as far as the economic development, because we all know that's kind of at the heart of any port's mission. That's part of it, and beyond. Are there other kind of visions across the island, other harbors that have potential, things like that, or is Eagle Harbor really the focus?
I think Eagle Harbor is the focus certainly for a fuel dock and for dinghy dock and even more than a dinghy dock, a place you can tie your boat up.
Okay, economic development. One of the things it could do, the port on Bainbridge could do is, we used to have a bus that ran around downtown Winslow, and in the last 10 years, I think there's an additional. I know there was at one point 450 new condominiums just in downtown Winslow that were put on the market. So the Winslow master plan planned for 3,700 additional people just in the Winslow area, which also 1997. So, and you've got a huge number of people that are have downsized, have moved to the condo in downtown and just walk around and so forth. And the bus is no longer there, and a port could go in partnership with someone, or could be the financial means for moving a bus around there so people can get to stores and move around. And
the Joel Pritchard Park, a great park that we have now, beach, the old creosote plant, is really a change. And then of course there's that marvelous Japanese, I don't know if you've visited that, but it is a very powerful visit for any of us. If people came from Seattle, they've got to bring their car to get there. You go to Nanaimo and you go to Victoria, and you go to Ganges, but they've got little ferries that tie the harbor together, and which are very nice. They can pick somebody up, they're off the ferry, and take them over to the park, and then bring them back to the pub, and where it could be a great thing for the downtown Winslow.
There were 7 stops in Eagle Harbor on the Mosquito Fleet at one point, moving up the harbor. So, I mean, if you had, and there's a lot of people that come over, because there's so little dock space, even if they have a dinghy, frequently there's no space to put the dinghy. So if you had a small launch service that also could take, like up at Granville Island, Vancouver, and you could take people that just up the island and up to the pub and across and whatever. That could all be something that a port district could help finance.
It seems to me that you've got a list of these priorities that it seems like could cost quite a bit of money. So the $620,000 is only going to go so far. That's the initial amount that you're talking about for people, but then when it comes down to it, if it's voted for and it gets started and you have the overhead and take over some responsibilities from the city, wouldn't you end up potentially in the same problem as the city in that there's the competing priorities?
Well, you plan it out so that, you know, 600,000, you've got $600,000 that could finance borrowing capability of maybe 2 million. And you're using that on payback on future revenue. I was in the clothing manufacturing business for a large manufacturer in Seattle for 30 years. And we had 1,000 retailers around the country, so was dealing with financing on long-term basis based on future cash flow, which is what this would do. And this is not something that would be done all at once. In all of these, this is a list that has come out of community need, out of the harbor management plan, this list. And so when the commissioners sit down and lay out what is the community priorities coming next year, this is how they come out with the funding. I don't think I feel very confident that they would not be going to 27 cents. There's the comfort level isn't there. Everyone is quite comfortable. The people that, when I was out getting signatures on petitions, people were quite comfortable with the concept of, you know, a latte a month on a $500,000 home and doing that. The possibility of you know, saying, well, let's do it at the max 45. That's why you have to set this up so that you have as many checks and balances as you can in the whole system. 5 commissioners at large, elected for 4 years. 3 in our thinking is too much power in the hands of too few for too long. So putting it for 5 and have them at large, not district, and then have a port advisory committee made up of people that are very interested in these projects, will help guide the whole system through.
I don't know if you could, actually Ron was going to, I'll let Ron ask his question. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I was just curious as to, I know when the mosquito fleet went away that there was a Port of Bainbridge that went away.
Mm-hmm.
Why did that go away?
It was only Eagle Harbor.
No, it says Port of Bainbridge. It was
Yes.
dissolved in 1960.
Yeah, the Port of Bainbridge Island, its district was only Eagle Harbor.
Okay.
As you had the Port of Agate Pass and Agate Point and
The first one
Ferncliff.
was Port Madison. They
Yeah.
also were the county seat before it went to
Yeah, and
Port Orchard.
Rolling Bay. So yes, they called it the Port of Bainbridge Island, but
Yeah, it was.
the district itself was only Eagle Harbor at the time.
Well, coming from the business side, Charles, following up on his question, are these 5 people getting a stipend? And the 5 commissioners? And if so, who determines that? And then what about the, you know, is the Port of Bremerton, they hire an executive director? And I mean, these things, you know, yeah, I know, they have a tendency to grow. So I'm just curious on the business side.
Okay, business side. State law requires that port commissioners are paid $90 per meeting for, I believe it's a port that has operating budget of less than 25 million. I'd have to quote me on that, but it's close to that. If you look at the Port of Kingston and the Port of Poulsbo and what they have in management and staff, I think there's the 3 commissioners in Kingston, 3 commissioners in Poulsbo. There's a staff of, I think, 3 in Kingston and maybe 4 in Poulsbo. So that's much more of an analogy of what we would end up having than a staff of 30 or so, or 5, or and an executive director is going to be down the road as you're developing your need and your priorities and your funding capabilities and other sources and of funds and so forth.
Who's your opposition out there?
Probably in all of us who are out getting signatures on the petition, I would say 80% of the people were, yes, I get it. This should have been done 20 years ago. The other 20 are saying, well, I'm not sure if I want another taxing district, but at least it should come to a public discussion, which is what will happen in the next couple months. The only major opposition has been the fact that it is a taxing authority. That's it. You have the fear factor. I mean, people,
Yeah.
the fear factor, not just of the taxing authority, but the fear factor that, oh, it's going to be another group of powerful people. Well, all you can do is set up a system that is checks and balances, and you can't deal with hypothetical negatives. So, what's the best way you can set up a new port? 5 commissioners at large for 4 years with a port advisory committee. That's the best way you can buy any definition, description in working, talking to the Washington Public Ports Association and so forth.
I had a second question about the petition. Do you have any idea of where the concentration of signatures came from? Was it mostly Winslow area? Was it pretty fairly distributed when you went out knocking on doors and things?
Oh, it's all over, because and the reason I know that is that when the petitions started coming in, and there were 10 signatures on a petition, they started coming in, and I'm looking at these things and I'm going, I can't read that. Well, the signature obviously nobody can read, right? But I couldn't read the printed name, or I couldn't read the address, and sometimes couldn't read, they wouldn't put phone numbers, email, and I'm thinking, okay, if I can't read it, I don't need these on my home. Okay, if I can't read it, then the people in the auditor's office aren't going to be able to read it either. And okay. So I literally spent 8 days, 6 hours a day, going through 178 petition sheets and going back either through reverse telephone directories. I have the complete voters list for all of Bainbridge Island that I got from the auditor's office, and making sure that
and how does it break down?
It's all over. It's all over the island. There is no geographic presence at all.
Pretty even north, south, west.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question?
I just have, I want to circle back around. When a new port is created, and I don't know how this works, when a new port is created, like you were talking about things with the trail ends and stuff like that, does the new port acquire anything? Do the trail ends now fall under the purview of the port, or is that something that then has to be? So you really have a new port with no
You have
assets
a new port with no assets to begin with, as you had in any port that was created. Yeah.
So you've got to then try to work out leases or purchases
Exactly.
from the city or the county.
Or with, there is also state law that allows a port to acquire the lease revenue from DNR aquatic leases if the port owns or leases the abutting upland, and that is just a procedure to go through that you deal with the DNR. And that makes sense, because it's, if you don't have a port, it's owned by the public.
Sorry, could you say that just one more time?
Oh, okay.
If you have a lease or own the uplands.
Uplands abutting an aquatic lease there is a procedure whereby the revenue for that aquatic lease is transferred to the port,
Okay.
if there's a port district. So
And the port owns some land.
then the port would need to own or control the upland part of it,
Right.
right?
The land where the dock connects.
It could be a dock, it could be tidelands, it could be
Tidelands or
badlands, it
shellfish.
could be
Yeah.
whatever,
Okay.
yeah, type of thing.
So you would have to work out with the county
Yeah.
and the city to
Right, exactly.
get the lease on
But
that, to get that.
Okay, right,
Right.
that's probably the simplest way to, easiest way to get any form of an asset type thing.
I wanted to ask you, so many commissioner candidates, I wanted to ask each one of you what you thought of the lineup and if there were any potential problem candidates that you saw or any ones that you really wanted to informally endorse in any way. And see quite a few familiar names, Darryl McNabb,
Yes,
Mary Dombrowski.
yes.
And I just wondered, who would you like to see on the Board of Commissioners?
My passion, two big things. This is absolutely totally unusual in the world of elections where you have the creation of the entity at the same, on the ballot at the same time as you have the election of the people who are going to run that entity. And so my total focus is on educating the community on the value of a port, and I place no preference on any of the candidates.
I don't really know them all that well. All I know is that I'm retired and going to stay that way.
But I must say, I was absolutely blown away at the level of enthusiasm. I mean, it just tells you how concerned the community really is when you get 15 and you've got really, really good people with a lot of business experience, with city experience, with all kinds of...
I was happy to see that they weren't all voters. I think that's terribly important, that this doesn't become a voter versus the non-voter. I mean, that would be silly.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, because it has to be of value to everyone on the island.
otherwise it doesn't deserve to be there.
Yeah, and if you think, okay, I said 14,000 voters in the last general election. I know that there are, I know of 3,000, approximately 3,000 registered boats on the island. So there's 800 that call Eagle Harbor alone home. Okay, so we're going to need, and if we need 7,001 or 6,992, 98 boats here, we're going to need the support of the community, the business community. I've talked to many of the business people downtown, and they can just see the benefit of doing anything to increase potential business, which a port can certainly do.
The sales tax on the fuel should be worth something. Not everybody has a sailboat like me. Some of these things are using 6 and 8 gallons an hour. And
Well, even here's an interesting story. From an environmental point of view, with respect to the fuel, one of the fellows that signed the petition down at Winslow Wharf, and he very much for it, and he said, okay, because I have a powerboat, and I consume 12 gallons of fuel to go across to Seattle to get fuel. And I do that 5 times a year. So that's 60 gallons for me. And if, how many power boats do you think we have in the island, Winnie? And I said, well, there's about 3,000 boats I know of. Okay, and he says, so say we've got 1,000 power boats. Okay, so that's 60,000 gallons of fuel consumed to go get fuel to begin with. And then many people have said, and you see people walking up the highway with jerry cans.
yeah, that's what I do.
And you come back and you're pouring a jerry can into the back end of a boat. I mean, how much gas goes into the water? It just makes sense. Yeah, exactly.
Curious why they went to Seattle and not Brownsville.
Yeah, they
Well,
they do go to Brownsville. Should have a little more water there for some.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But they do have.
But they do have, you bet.
facilities.
Which I asked him that, he says from Eagle Harbor,
Yeah,
Seattle's shorter.
yeah, that's it. Most of the population of boats is on the east side of the island.
How are they gonna select the leader among the five of them?
Draw straws.
Is that what, I mean, I wonder, is there a procedure for that?
No, there is no,
So it's not the person that had the most votes or anything?
oh, no, how are the 5 going to be selected?
No. How's a leader among the five? Somebody has to be a leader.
They will determine their own
Okay.
chair of the commission, as the Harbor Commission has, as the
Yeah,
Parks Board
it would
has.
rotate around like any body.
Right.
Yeah,
Like the
as the
commission.
Parks Board does. I mean, we have an example, the Parks Board on the island is 5 people at large, serving the whole community, and with a very narrow focus and very transparent in their operations and taxing procedures and so forth. So we've got 12 of these in the community. It's about time we had one.